So in 1964, Pontiac introduced the GTO, and it was such a cool car that the Beach Boys actually recorded a song about it called My Little GTO. And that was really the beginning of the muscle car era, 1964. And by coincidence, it's the year I started working at my Texaco service station. So I kind of grew up with these cars and engines from my youth, and it's fun working on them again. So almost 60 years later, Pontiacs are still popular. There's millions of Pontiac fans out there that are passionate about them. And if you're one of them, hang in there, because we're going to start this up and let you hear how nice it runs. And between Mike and I tell you lots about it. So welcome to Gold Scratch. I'm Alan Gold, and this is Mike Kimball, and Mike is the owner of this engine. And Mike actually owns two of them. And when you get this one done, we'll be starting up the second one, or starting to rebuild the second one. I got to get my 235 Chev done first. It's over in the corner. You can't see it right now, but we'll get back to that. So let's talk about this one. So back in July, Mike brought me this engine. I made a couple of videos, short videos. It was hanging on my skyhook. It was all rusty and grungy. It had not run for a long time. And Mike brought it to me to see what it needed, and it needed a complete rebuild. It was actually seized. Since then, it's had a complete and total detailed rebuild. The cylinder block's been hot tank, magnum flux, bored 30 thou over. We did install stock pistons. This is basically a stock rebuild with the exception of the camshaft, which I'll talk about. The crankshaft was ground and polished. The oil holes were radiused. We also reconditioned the connecting rods. Everything else in the engine, the oil pump, diamond gears, all that stuff, of course, is all brand new. And the carburetor is the correct Rochester Quadrajet carburetor. That's the original steel intake manifold. The ignition points were in the car, and then on the motor I've converted Protronics, electronic ignition, and used the Protronics flame controller coil. So this is a stock rebuild, and the calculated static to pressure ratio is about 9.1 to 1. And by virtue of the Summit 2801 cam that we use, which has a real nice closing point, the intake valve closes 35 degrees after bottom dead center, and that gives us a dynamic pressure ratio of more than 8 to 1, which should really help. These are torque monsters anyway. That should really help the low end and mid-range torque when this engine's running on the street. And that's really what we need for a street car. So that cam is 214 to 224. Intake and exhaust respectively at 50 thou. And I did install this cam straight up on 108 degree center line, and that gives us that 35 degree closing point. The lift on the cam is 466. It has 1.5 stock rockers on it right now. Before we go to the dyno, we will be making a dyno test on the 12th of February, so watch for that. We'll be making a video of the dyno run at Darrell's Dyno Service, Waters Dyno Service in Springfield, Ontario, and we'll see what it does when we do that. So, what else can I tell you about it? I think I pretty much covered most of the things on the engine, so I'm going to turn it over to Mike. Mike is a Pontiac aficionado. He knows a lot more about the details of these than I do, and he's been really helpful. We worked together on this build, and I'll let Mike tell you some of the details about the engine itself.
So this is a completely correct 1970 Pontiac 400. It's coded YS, which is base 350 horse for an automatic, and it's correct for GTO or Firebird. And Al's done an excellent job restoring this engine, and we'll let you hear how it runs.
Okay, let's push it outside a little bit. More gas yourself. see, I haven't set up the carburetor idle adjustment yet. We have run this engine about 30 minutes on the test stand. That's 4 sessions totally. I have checked the valves 3 times already. Everything is good. The camshaft's broke in. And as you know, once it gets past that first 20 minutes, it's going to have a long and happy life. So everything there is good. And this thing is pretty much ready to rock and roll. We will run it a little more, get the idle adjustment, all that stuff done, change the rocker arms, and take it to the dyno in, I guess that's 4 weeks from now. So, if you found this interesting, if you have any questions or comments, please put it on my YouTube channel, Gold's Garage. And we also like subscribers. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, and then you will get notified when we get this thing to the dyno as well. So, thank you for watching Gold's Garage.